a point in history where we can all see the cycle changing. Where we go from here is up to us. So let's start the conversation, and welcome to the show.
And welcome to Civilization Cycle. I'm not sure where the other party is. Maybe some technical difficulties because the radio setup got, I don't know, it's all messed up because Skype is ending. So I don't know how that's going to work out. And that might be the problem with Dubai is he might be having issues with the Skype. On my end, they deleted the function to make video and audio calls on the app. It updated itself, and I don't know. Let's see. I'm going to see if I got some communication going here. It says lottie dottie. Oh, sounds like Dubai might have got knocked off the network due to storms in Tennessee there. Let's ask Ryan. He's out there. Do you hear? Are you monitoring the show there, Ryan? I think the Dubai is incommunicado right now. No telling where he's at. So, I don't know. I guess if I'm on Revolution Radio, I need to, because I'm using the browser edition of Skype, which still has the settings available on it. So I was able to use that, but I'm not sure if I'm actually live or not. Let's see here. I know I'm live on YouTube and Rumble and whatnot. So it might be just a notification show, if that makes sense. At least for the minute, we'll find out. We'll give them some time. There's a whole lot going on right now. Let me confirm I'm actually on the radio first before we get too ahead of ourselves and count our chickens before I made an omelet or something to that effect. Let's see here. Where's my channel on YouTube? Looks like I'm live on YouTube for sure. So this end of things is working. So maybe we'll get a hold of David Dubine in a minute. This is Civilization Cycle. And I'm your host, I guess, the only one tonight, Ransom Godwin. Here at your disposal, but don't dispose of me too fast. So let me see. I got Ryan, who lives in Tennessee too. Let me check in with him. Am I on? No. Am I on? So we'll check to see if I'm on the radio end. And I guess if I am indeed on the radio channel, then we'll just rock and roll and I'll try to fill in the gaps. I'm not the plumber. I'm just the plumber's son. But I will plug the hole until the plumber comes. Just kidding. A little dark humor. Let's see here. If we got, let me check Revolution Radio chat room over there and see if I'm live in case Ryan is not available. Let's see here. Oops. There it is. We're on the chat. Let's see what's going on over there in Radio Land. Let's see. They don't seem to be saying anything. Am I live on Revolution Radio, Studio A? A? Am I live? A? On A? So, let's try not to take ourselves too seriously until we find out what's going on. Somebody's typing. We're about to get it. You're live. All right. So we'll try to figure out what's going on with David Dubine in the background. It's a mystery. And Ryan says we sound good. So let's just rock and roll until we figure out what's up with Dubine. Maybe he's out of power or something. David is a go. So let me see if I can add him to the conversation here. Maybe that's what we got to do. Let's see what happens now. We might have to switch over to the old school. Hello? Thought I heard somebody. Redo the call. All right, we're going to hang up on the revolution, people. And we will try to reconnect. Dun, dun, dun. We might not be able to have the video. Like I said, Skype has done some weird stuff, and we might have to go over to the old school, and I'll just load the radio feed while we show you guys cool pictures and advertisements of the news. Not really advertisements, I guess. Well, I hung up. Let's see here. Let's see if he can call us. It doesn't say he's online on the Skype versions that I'm looking at here. You there? See, and you guys just have to look at my pretty face until we figure it out. How about that? Let's see what you guys are doing over in the chats as I stall for time. Live and in the flesh. You are live, Ransom. Thank you. I appreciate that. Over on Rumble. And we got a 0 watching, but weirdly a full chat room on my Mountain High Time there. Says nobody's watching, but there's people talking. Get in, but got knocked out from some bad thunderstorms. I think he may be coming online here. So like there's a weird thing. I don't know if I want to call the radio or let him call the radio or add him or try to add him. Ryan's my in between there. Let's ask him what's going on. I see nothing. All right. We got incoming messages. This is like, what happens in a big event. I think it's really weird what Skype's doing. And I figure what's going on is a lot of the functions are free and allows podcasters to just, podcast, add a guest pretty easily. The audio video's good. You could share video in real time. His phone's working, but might be something wrong with this internet. Well, damn it, man. But anyway, I think Skype's trying to move over to this thing called Microsoft Teams, which is going to be metered like Zoom, and they'll charge you every month. Oh, weird. He's been messing you. Here, I think I have a fix. To use the browser version. Yeah. So Skype's kind of throwing a wrench in it. and things aren't working the same. See, I have my own setup and my own software and stuff, but that has nothing to do with Skype. It integrates Skype, which is another thing I think is the reason that they're ending it, is because it works too good and everybody can use it and they could just go live and they could connect easy. The softwares take the feeds, so you could set up your scene and all that stuff. On Chrome, because it don't work right on Foxfire. See, we're just doing live technical patches here while we're live. Anyway, you guys ready to see the blood moon tonight? I'll give them a minute to figure that out. How to see the blood moon. It's coming tonight. I think I got that ready right here. I was messing with the communications and didn't set it up right yet. Anyway, check this. How to see the blood moon tonight. Well, basically, you just go outside and look up. Probably about after, I think it's 11 o'clock here Mountain Time, so that'd be 10 Central, or no, 12 Central, 1 o'clock Eastern Time, or something like that. Anyway, it's going to be out there for hours tonight. So basically, all you got to do is go outside and look up. If you got clear skies, you'll be able to see this blood moon, the first we've had in several years. And it should be cool. I plan on going out and trying to film it. The only problem is it's really sandy and dirty in the atmosphere where I live because of the wind. But if you're, anywhere else in the United States, Mexico, South America, along the Andes, you'll be able to get a good view of the blood moon tonight. And they're pretty trippy. And what's funny is every single time these things happen, I get out there and I watch it. I've probably seen almost every one that was available, unless it was too cloudy. And almost every time it's cold. It's cold outside for some reason. Americans will witness a rare blood moon, total lunar eclipse tonight. Ought to be something. Let me check in on our sponsors. Nada. I don't see nothing. Here we go. Incoming information. Sweet. We may have David Dubine momentarily, if everything works out right. Let's see here. Well, I guess I shouldn't have hung up on the radio guys yet. We'll just jump back in there like nothing happened. Yeah, that happens. So that is what I thought. It sounds like Dubine updated his Skype and then it disabled a lot of the functions. And I've been having to use the browser edition because they haven't removed the functions yet. Anyway, let's get into the news here till they figure out what's going on in the netherverse of Tennessee. Actually, I think we're supposed to get some rain and snow tonight later on here, which might mess up my view of the blood moon. Did you see all of this? I really can't wait to get David on because I've been just looking at some really crazy articles coming across the headlines, which to me are just pieces in a puzzle that shows the new era that's coming. And just like I told you in the past, they are redrawing the maps. All the maps will change. And that might be part of why the new administration wants to rename things, renegotiate borders and boundaries. You see that happening in the Middle East. We're about to see that in Western Eurasia. And we're about to see that, I think, in Central America and South America as well. In the meantime, everybody's freaking out because, like we told you guys, we're going to have some, I don't know how to put it, a recession? Hopefully not a depression. But either way, it was kind of predictable, not only from changing the way that the business is done, but also all those people that want to see the United States fail, and different economic factors are all just kind of coming together. And I even predicted that during the Trump administration, we would probably have some bad financial times. S&P 500 closes in correction territory Thursday as stocks tumble again on Trump's tariff threats. Gold hits record high on Trump's latest tariff threats. And remember a while back, I told you that China was in the production of D-Day style invasion barges. And now they're showing them off. So they're complete. They're done building them. And if I can mute this for you guys so I don't get copyrighted on the show here. Look at this thing. Things are starting to look familiar. And when I say familiar, I'm talking 1941 or even earlier, 1939 probably. And I don't mean the racial problems that seem to have been part of the war, but this will be a war about gold, money, and grain. Gold and grain. It's going to be the GG war. Gold and grains. Who has it? What are they going to do with it? Who can last the longest? So just imagine prices going up a lot and not much food. Matter of fact, I wanted to put up a slide here for you guys. And this is kind of what David Dubine's been talking about for years. Right here. If I could figure out how to do it here. All right, there it is. Nope, not that one. This one. And this is a graph. It says America has been importing more food than it exports. So, if we were to line up for some kind of worldwide conflict, we're not in a very good position as far as food. So, this would mean that you would have to take your future in your own hands and start investing in food production now, even though we've told you for years that you needed to prepare for that. It seems like maybe the time is now here. Let me see what's going on over here. More technical difficulties. I'm going to go ahead and call the radio station back, and they can listen to us too. Maybe I can. Let's see if I can try this again. All right. We're live. Back on Studio A, Civilization Cycle. Sorry for the technical issue. We're having problems connecting with David Dubine due to the new Skype changes and eventually the ending of the service of Skype. But let me see if I can get David Dubine on here via me. Let's see here. Try to add him on here. Hello. David is unavailable. Well, we'll wait on that again. Anyway, we were talking about, while we were off air on the radio, the lead up to what looks like is an inevitable World War III, or at least a controlled conflict that redesigns the map worldwide. Let's get in some of the articles that make me think that we're kind of on that exact course here. So for you guys, let me get rid of this. Oh, and what you missed while we were quiet there is I was talking about if we do indeed get into this scenario, that the United States is not really in a good position as far as food. America has been importing more food than it exports. In other words, we need more food than we're selling, so that's not really a good thing. And maybe you should be looking into how to create your own food because we may be having financial difficulties in the near future that I don't expect to last for like a decade or anything like that, but 6 months to a year is reasonable to think and probable uh, when compared to today's headlines. So what I was talking about, Central America and the redesigning of the maps. Here's an article from the Express talking about Donald Trump ordering the military to draw up plans to seize the Panama Canal, which, considering we built it, we're reclaiming it, in my opinion. And that's exactly what the Trump administration is calling it. The U.S. official said military action in Panama would only be considered if the country does not allow Donald Trump to reclaim the canal. So, in other words, that's going to happen. And you can imagine in Panama, they have a lot of push from China and other countries not to let us have this back because that essentially allows us to control all trade from Europe to the New World and beyond. It's kind of hard to go back the other way. And if you know, all of the other ports there in the Mediterranean and other places are also probably about to experience a changing in the map or redesigning of the borders. Trump pushes annexation of Greenland during meeting with NATO secretary. So this is a real plan, and it would put a strategic advantage for the North American continent, the U.S. specifically. Vladimir Putin makes ceasefire decision and gives Ukraine chilling surrender or die ultimatum, but at the same time, supposedly the peace deals that are going on right now would be that Ukraine concedes some of their real estate that was really technically never theirs, considering that half of Ukraine was Poland in World War II, and the other half, or prior to World War II, and the other half was classically Russia. It was called the Ukraine, area. The whole area there was called the Ukraine, but it wasn't really a country too far back into the timeline. And also, there was a treaty amongst the breakaway countries from the Soviet Union that basically said if they couldn't function on their own, that the Soviet Union or the new Russian Federation would default take back the government. And a lot of people don't know this, that the Crimea was actually one of those provinces, not part of Ukraine, but its own province, and they had a failed state. And that's one of the reasons that Russia took it back, not to mention their naval base and all of the, stuff that they've invested in the area. Let's check back in with the Dubai and see what's going on for a second. He seems not to be able to communicate via Skype, which I was having issues with the same thing, but I got it going. Let's see here. No new information. He's re-downloading it and restarting his computer. So we may have some Dubai after all. Let's go through these articles while we're waiting. We kind of talked about the blood moon tonight while we were off there at the radio station, but pretty much all you have to do to see the total lunar eclipse, this rare blood moon, is go outside tonight and look up. The moon should be right above you tonight, red. And that's because the light from the sun kind of caresses the earth and curves around it, giving that red spectrum in the shadow of the earth that's going to be completely covering the moon tonight. So that ought to be cool. Here's another cool thing for all you people that have been paying attention to the basic debunking of the out of Africa theory, the oldest human skulls outside of Africa might not be Homo erectus after all, meaning, like, if you've been watching my channel, I've talked about it. There were probably 20 different hominids running around the planet at the same time. And there is no one source of mankind. Seemingly, we were all over the planet. It's very possible that in their future, they find new hominids or even hominids like Cro-Magnon, Neanderthal, or Denisovan in places they never considered. But kind of back to the next, I guess, edition of the New World Order's plans, which is the reduction of worldwide population through war and basically famine. And, they could even throw another a pandemic in there. Or a pandemic might happen, I should say. Better watch my tongue with the Ministry of Truth out there. But anyway, breaking video. Trump says pieces of Ukraine land and a power plant are on the negotiating table while they're meeting with the heads of NATO. Confirms no NATO membership for Ukraine, which is, a good idea if we don't want World War III to be the default position that we're going into. But in the background, I'm sure you guys seen, a lot of the elections in Europe are not so democratic, if you know what I'm saying, where they block the people that win, that are elected by the people. But don't worry, they're doing that in the name of democracy. And meanwhile, economically, we may be having some troubles coming. Consumer angst is striking all income levels. And I don't know if you heard the idea of Trump floating around, no one under $150,000 getting income taxes or other taxes, which would be great for poor people. I don't know how that would work out, but considering the amount of income that the government receives via tax or theft, you can see that they get a lot and they waste it and they don't invest it here and they don't give it back to you in the first place. And it's the whole idea of the, income tax refund is kind of funny in the first place, considering that money was already yours. And then they give it back to you. He may have been hacked. Oh no, that's not good. It's probably just Skype, I'm telling you guys. That's all right. We're going to go live and continue being live until Dubai gets underway after dealing with this. Maybe hacked, he said. It's okay. I'll go solo. Solo. And don't forget, Revolution Radio is customer supported. No, listener supported. I'm sorry. Customer. I guess you guys are the customers out there that are listening on the radio. And, they're completely listener supported. So think about helping Revolution Radio out. And if you'd like to help Civilization Cycle, don't forget to buy us a coffee. The link's under the thing, and there it is on screen for you guys on YouTube and Rumble and whatnot. There's the blank spot for David Dubai, but we'll get back to that in time. Anyway, back to the economy and what I was saying. Wrong slide. There we go. Consumer angst striking all income levels. We have the S&P 500 closing in correction territory, as they're saying. Thursday, as the stocks tumble again on tariff and gold hitting record highs. That means, he who has the gold's going to be making the rules. So maybe if you thought ahead, you might be doing good right now. War rafts, and this is something that I mentioned on my show earlier, is that you know, this whole repeat of the World War II style kind of, I don't know what it's called. It's called an energy, I guess. A whole World War II vibe has been kind of been going on, especially in Europe. As you watch European countries kind of attack their own citizens by trying to remove all of the energies that facilitate civilization, like electricity or heat or even food, attacks on farmers, attacks on ranchers, attacks on the people that need heat to survive the winters, especially the elderly in different countries in Europe. I'm not going to name names or pick on them. They might catch me coming through an airport sometime. That's kind of why I don't travel anywhere close to China. Because I'll be honest, I'm worried about them, facially recognizing me and having a whole folder file ready of some of the opinions that might not be too flattering to the CCP. And I don't mean the Civilization Cycle podcast. I mean, those communist bastists. Anyway, let's replay this. For people on the radio, what I'm playing is I think it was last year, articles started coming out about China building these World War II style barges that would just roll up on the beach. They'd put a ramp so they could roll down tanks, people, all that stuff. Well, now this article showing they have indeed completed those things, and they're pretty trippy looking. These giant barges, they come up, they just put a ramp out. So they may be indeed really working on plans to eventually invade Taiwan. Now, a lot of people don't think that'll ever happen, but it became more of a reality when President Obama removed the fleet that was in between China and Taiwan, kind of nodding to the Chinese that we're probably not going to do anything if they invade Taiwan. Now, I hope not. My feelings and my heart goes out to those in Taiwan, just like they did for the people in Hong Kong. Unfortunately, have you seen any of those Hong Kong protesters in the years that followed? Me neither. They're probably sitting next to a Uyghur somewhere in a concentration camp. But who knows? I don't know what happened to them. All I know is you don't really hear about free Hong Kong or a free Hong Kong anymore. And I think it'll be something similar to that if China actually decides to invade Taiwan. I think that's just, inevitable, something that's going to happen. Especially if the world gets involved in a multinational conflict equivalent to World War III. Hopefully we don't go nuclear, but you never know. Here's some cool news. A woman who lived 117 years had genes keeping her cells younger. According to the study, the U.S.-born woman was the world's oldest living person before she died in Spain last August at age 117. Once attributed her longevity to luck and good genetics, and stutter problem there, and evidently, not even the right word, Maria was right. A study on her microbiome and DNA that scientists began conducting before her death reportedly determined that her genes she inherited allowed her cells to essentially feel and behave as if they were 17 years younger than they actually were. So it may be possible for you to, feel younger, and that may be actually true. If your cells think they're younger, well, I guess maybe you are too. Now, this is very interesting, as the nation kind of watched these fires in California. And last week, I don't have the articles open, but a lot of people in LA are doing what I brought up, 3 shows ago, which are deciding to rebuild their houses in a way that they won't burn down again. So some people are going with Adobe, other people going with other flame retardant materials, fireproof materials, windows that won't bust or crack uh, up into like really hot, degrees. I don't remember the number, but basically heat resistant windows, which all seems perfectly reasonable, and maybe that should have went into effect 50 years ago. In fact, there is a story of one guy that the Santa Ana fires destroyed all of the surrounding hillside and houses near him, but his house survived. And the way that it did is that he already had thought ahead, and he built his home completely out of fire retardant and fire resistant materials. So when the fire rolled through and burned everything around his home, he literally just washed his house off with a garden hose and was back in business. Now, I don't know where the article is, but I saw one last week that was talking about a lot of these millionaires and even billionaires probably that live in these beautiful areas along the coast that got completely ravaged by fires, are opting to rebuild their homes Adobe, so that it's very possible that the Adobe will not catch fire or burn down, which is a great idea. And despite the stress of the fires, most LA County residents do not plan to leave, according to this poll. Despite widespread stress, smoke inhalation, and other disruption caused by January fires, a majority of Los Angeles County residents are happy with their lives here and don't plan to leave. I bet you that's pretty upsetting, to BlackRock and others, or, whatever corporation might be ready to buy up the property every single time one of these events happens. And it's not a big conspiracy theory. These companies are out to buy all the private property until not a single person owns property. And at that point, we all will be back in a feudalist style system where you'll have lords of the area, or the Scottish said, the lairds. Lairds. Just kidding. I've been watching the Scottish show on TV. But anyway, it'll be just like feudalism. You're going to have to pay your taxes to the local lord, and, they'll be telling you how to do things, how the cabbage eats the horse. They'll be the ones giving the directions around here, as they used to put it. But they really can't do that if people resist and don't sell their property. If they don't sell their property, they continue to have rights. Rights are in the property that you own itself. Without property, free people can't exist. Without private property, there's no way that you can be free, because there will be so many rules and regulations on properties, homes, businesses that other people own, especially these billion-dollar conglomerate, companies that work together to buy up all the private property, all the farmland. And that's indeed the era we're in, where these real estate companies, private equity firms, all of these different people are trying to buy every last little bit of private property up, which puts every citizen in the position of never-ending rent, basically. And even if you own your home and you're a bad financial situation and one of these banks or other corporations has the mortgage, it's very likely that in the end, they are going to own your home as well. Thank God I own my own little piece of, hellhole here in southern New Mexico, but I do own it. But I still have to pay the property tax rent. So maybe if things change and people under $150,000 a year really don't have to pay things, which I doubt would include all of the taxes that really eat the substance out of the citizens now, like sales tax, property tax, death tax, inheritance tax, capital gains, yada, 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 yada. Lots of taxes. I don't think it'll incorporate all of those. But even if you don't have to pay an income tax, I think it would be better to put the position and really the responsibility back into the hands of the individual earner worker, taxpayer, citizen. And then they can choose, if they want, to pay taxes, which is basically how it used to run anyway. Before there was an income tax, we had plenty of schools and roads and all of that stuff. It was all functioning. And when there wasn't enough tax, people donated. And there was a lot of that, like people together on a road would get together and pay for a road themselves. They didn't need the Department of Transportation to figure it out. And I think that's what really rubbed the government wrong in these last couple of disasters, like the Hurricane Helen and all the flooding, or Helene, however you say it, and these fires in California and some of the hurricanes before that and the previous years, is that people didn't wait for the government. And the smart people got together and helped each other. And charity and good works worked faster, more efficient, and in the long run, cheaper than anything that any government agency could supply. But don't worry about it. They still have the alien card. And I know we joke about this a lot, but if you really think about the world government, the WEFs, the Bilderberg, the Davos groups, the World Economic Everything, all of these groups that try to impose world government, these unelected bureaucrats and financial tycoons that try to make the rules for every last person, they have a good grip on the world. They have a good grip on the future. A transhuman future awaits you no matter who's in charge. That's just a rollout of technology. The question is will we as citizens be able to steer that? And I think that we could, and it wouldn't be that hard, but they have a lot of tricks up their sleeves. Basically, the four horsemen of the world government. So that's disease, poverty, what's the other one? Death? I don't know. I don't remember them all. Those four guys, though, are out there. And if that don't work, we'll just have a fake alien invasion, or even, dare I say, a real one. Whether it's AI, or, some people out there believe in the angels and demon phenomenon, or even the interdimensional beings. I myself am not a fan of that. I'm more of a fan of nuts and bolts reality. However, they can make that reality arguably viable or believable to the public. If they made a bunch of people freak out over a little drone, that's equivalent to the mindset whenever, George Orwell read, what was it, War of the Worlds on the radio, and all kinds of people freaked out because they joined the broadcast late and thought what they were hearing from the Operation Mockingbird, the mainstream media, had to be true, which is the same thing that happens today. People believe a lot of things that are not real are real, and things that are real are, not real according to them, which puts it hard on the individual to actually know what's real and what's not real, because if you weren't there and you didn't see it with your own eyes, how would you know if it's just a story, if it's just propaganda, if it's a delusion? You would never know unless you were there. But in today's world, we have the kind of technology that can deceive you in real time. We have technology in the biological realms, and I'll get to it in a minute, where we're just creating creatures on this earth that never have existed. They may be part extinct animal, part, animal that exists today, a chimera of several animals that were never, ever going to be mixed together. And unfortunately, the human species now falls into that category. There's people with 3 different people's DNA. There's people that didn't have a mother or a father. And you think I'm joking about this. I don't actually know if those people are running around out there. We do know those girls from China kind of disappeared in the wind, and those were genetically created human beings where their DNA was altered. So they were GMOs. And then you have, articles talking about we no longer need a mother or a father, that they can make a human-like entity just by putting DNA together. And this all is very interesting, but what if they just threw the idea of an alien invasion, and that's how they broke the idea of limitless energy and anti-gravitics to the public? It's by giving them a
Ran-
fake alien
ransom.
invasion. Hey, wow. There you are.
What if they're demons pretending to be aliens to help humanity, but it's really to convert to a one world religion and AI, not AI, but an AI, as in demonic electrical consciousness with a counter rotating field. I don't know, man. I was just going to join you. I had all kind of crazy tech problems, but welcome everybody. Thanks for
Sweet.
letting me chime in.
Are you on the browser? Is that where we're connected at?
No, everything failed, man. I got blue screen of death on my main computer with my tower. The laptop, nothing works. We had this electrical storm. A second backup computer doesn't work, so I'm back on my phone here as a backup to the backup to the backup.
Sweet.
Yeah, I lost
Yeah,
3 devices here in one day. That's insane, man.
that is crazy. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. I'm saying I don't. I think I'm using the browser on my end. Unfortunately, I can't patch your video through because they removed the option.
Yeah, so Skype's going down for if anybody knows that just next month, Skype will no longer be available for use. So anybody out there that's been contacting us or follows through Skype or whatnot here, I'm going to be moving to Telegram. And Ransom, I don't know what venue you're going to move to, but ourselves, still keeping in contact on Telegram. And Revolution Radio is going to be, and I talked to got a couple of messages today asking about how the venue is going to move from the seed point here on Skype to Revolution Radio, and they're kind of working through Sandbox right now to see which other areas we can broadcast from. But think about how many people relied on Skype, businesses, persons, groups, etc. But they're gonna. It seems like there's a consolidation of communication going on as well. If you notice that, like everything's being funneled in communication channels now. So this is just another one. The freedom to be able to speak to anybody you want in any country at any time for like mere pennies, that is going away.
Yeah, that's exactly kind of what I was talking about before you connected. Is that this move from Microsoft seems to be directly targeting not just podcasters, but like you said, people being able to communicate instantly from around the world. It was too good. They had too many options. They had too many plugins. It all worked. And they want to move over to things that are more metered, where they can charge you individually, and they want to exclude groups unless they get a really big fee.
Yeah, and that's the thing I was looking at too is, originally I was trying to buy world minutes, and that was the first thing that I ran into a few months ago was they were no longer selling. Before you just buy like $50 worth of minutes, right? And it didn't matter which country you called, all the countries are available and you paid by the minute for whatever country. But then they stopped that, where you then had to go on a payment plan. So inside the United States, unlimited minutes for $2.50 a month. And you're like, okay. But then even if you want to make one phone call to the UK, you'd have to buy the $2.50 per month, connection to the UK. And then if I wanted to call somewhere else in Asia, like I say, I wanted to call Taiwan or something, and then, another $2.50 per month just to be able to call Taiwan. So like the top 3 to 5 to 10 countries that you call every month that you might make it just one phone call for business or 2 phone calls, you have to have a payment subscription plan for that. And then it came out to, $25, $35 a month just to be able to connect with the people you connected with before for a few cents a month. This whole subscription model world we've moved into is just getting to the absurd now, and we are being milked, and our money is being siphoned away. This wealth transfer of either rent it, subscription it, this is where it's going to lease it. Like, where's the ownership? The ownership's being stripped out of our world as well. Everything's going to this consumptive pay by the month model, pay by the usage model. Even some of the stuff I used to have when I was, and I still do have for some, video editing software, if I hadn't gotten the student program through a coupon through somebody I knew at a university, I would have been pulled back into that ridiculous pay by the month lease program for software that I've already bought. Like before, you remember when software, when you bought it, you just like owned it and you put it on your computer? But now everything, there's no more of buying a software program and putting it on your computer. Everything is now you buy it and then you have to pay by the month to continue to use it. I don't care if it's Microsoft Office or if it's whatever you're using, Adobe or Camtasia or whatever. It's just getting to a ridiculous point. That's why I say when you're going to own nothing and you're not going to be happy because you're going to be milked dry every month for basic subsistence to be able to communicate and do online work. Need a workaround for this. So Linux, thank you for allowing your open source to be the savior for the rest. And I am absolutely saying unequivocally, without a doubt, everybody needs to move to Linux immediately, because as much as your self-custody in a cryptocurrency wallet, self-custody in cold wallet, you're going to need to self-custody your data, and then Linux would provide you with that. And there's a heap of ton of programs that are out there open source free that mimic anything else and are available for free. Like we're moving into a world where you're going to either have to hit that learning curve to get to a free set of things that preserves your data, or you're going to be the slave of these companies forever. And we've reached this junction now. I'm absolutely, man, my mind has been just ripped wide open this week about the failure of the technology and the milking of monies out to use the technology. And it just kind of all culminated this week that made me go completely just smash into a wall and move to a different direction on my tech. So Linux, I'm a fan. I'm now a lifelong user of your tech, beginning now.
Right. It seems like that would be obvious that everybody would move in the direction of those. And it's not just the computer programs for your PCs and things. I was irritated with the whole phase where they tried to take everything and move it to your phone, because that was the first steps in stopping people from having their own software at home. I actually still have copies of stuff from the early 2000s that I put on thumb drives that work better than the options available today as far as audio engineering and stuff. And I just kept those. I kept those programs isolated from the computer, because as soon as you go online, they'll auto update that program and disable all of the features that worked. Like there's really no reason to move away from Skype, but I did check out the Microsoft Teams, and it looks like a copy of Zoom. And from what I can tell, it's going to charge large amounts of money for you to meet with other people. Now, they still have, your ability to broadcast from your home, but without connecting to other people and using that as a feed, it really limits all the podcasters out there on, how they can connect to people around the world. I mean, think about the way Skype was. I could talk to somebody in South Africa, no problem, and do a show with them. But I don't know how that's going to go. But this seems like a very cold corporate plan to ruin a good thing, in my opinion.
Yeah, if you're going to connect with somebody in Zimbabwe or Kenya, you'd spend like 2 cents a minute to connect with them, right? But now you need the individual payment plan for each individual nation that you want to call into. So you make one phone call, you're still going to have to get on a recurring plan for $250 US a month, and then if you forget to cancel the plan the next month, and they snag you for another $250. So it's just about trying to get recurring income, and they find this recurring income model is the way to go. And with the world change that we're seeing right now, I do believe that the lines of communication are being severed as much as the delivery and logistics lines are being severed right now. back to talk about a second hour ransom. Thank you for taking over while my tech difficulties. Come on back, second hour. Civilization cycle.
You're listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. And we'll be right back after this message.
Join me on the Brian Rouge Show on Revolution Radio, Eastern Standard Time, every Tuesday night from 6 to 8. We talk about the four most vital things, in my view, affecting all of humanity. Number one is UFOs and aliens and their agenda for the advancement of humanity. Number two is the Jewish establishment's control over all aspects of human civilization. Number three, the truth about Adolf Hitler, how he was the opposite of what we've been told. Number four is advanced ancient global civilizations. Join me on the Brian Rouge Show, Tuesday nights from 6 to 8 on Studio B on Revolution Radio.
Do you love topics about history, world events, popular conspiracies, and everything under the sun, while discussing their historical context? Then welcome your host, Trinity, where no topic is off the table, truth is spoken to power, and where your voice can be heard. Here is where you can communicate openly and learn from one another, while respecting our diverse society and figuring out the truth to where we're heading. Join Trinity in a 2-hour roller coaster ride of research, comedy, and interesting content, made with you in mind, people that matter the most. On Mondays at 12 a.m. Eastern and 11 p.m. Central, only on Revolution Radio Studio B. Be a part of a different way to hear radio.
Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported radio station on the internet. Please help support this station so this battle can continue forward. Revolution Radio!
And welcome back here, second hour, Civilization Cycle. Ransom taking us through the first hour. Tech breakdowns happening, electrical storms rolling, and the, I guess, awareness of this amplification of the human species and domination of the domain of the human realm was being seen by all. Some are accepting it, others are nervous of it, but it is ongoing. On-demand deception is sort of the way we're moving with that. So there's on-demand liquidity from XRP. Now we have on-demand individual social media posts based on your prior consumption of social media. Individual AI is making individual posts just for you. And now we have the on-demand deception moving into full steam as well. And that takes many forms. Again, they've taken all of your previous consumption of social media and they will put 2 opposing articles out to get you to debate in your own mind which one is true or not true. And then that goalpost moves a fraction each time. And you have to wonder, who's paying for all this? To have it swung into the deception of humanity. That's more the question when we're going to talk about here in the second hour. But Revolution Radio, thank you for letting us broadcast this evening. Seed point, but again, in just about a month or so, Skype's shutting down, so we're going to find a different seed point to broadcast out through here. But we'll stay right here on Rumble and YouTube Live every Thursday night, bringing you the information. So Ransom, take it over, man. You took us out and took us through the first hour, so I'd like to hear what you were moving on in the first hour, because I joined in the last 10 minutes, finally getting able to reconnect on Skype here. So second hour, man, take it away.
No, it's a good thing you came back. I started babbling about aliens. And what I really wanted to talk about is how the world's lining up for World War III. And all the signs are there. You remember, I guess, was it a week or 2 weeks ago, we were talking about, the copper recycling and the end of the pennies. And I started thinking about that a lot. And now I figured out what it's about. It wasn't about the pennies. It's about shells, right? So copper soars on Trump's tariffs probe, blah, blah, blah. They're blaming everything. But here's an article that might make that make sense. Critical metal for bombs and bullets explodes higher in mega squeeze amid global shortage. And then if I could find the other one, I was looking for another one. Here it is. No, that's the same one. Anyway, I didn't think about that, but that's kind of where I was going. Is I was about to bring up that this mass need for copper to reclaim all the copper may have nothing to do with electronics and more about creating things like brass and other things that we may be needing more of a supply of. And when you look through the headlines, you also see what's going on in Europe. They're ignoring elections, but they're also deciding that all of a sudden they want to rebuild their militaries because the U.S. is rebuilding their military. But it all kind of seems, silly when you re-look at those videos of those hypersonic bombs dropping on buildings with exact precision, exactly where they were supposed to land, and reminding yourself that there is no defensive measure against this technology. So we're moving into the age of robots, but that ain't really going to get going until after we reduce the population by far. And everything's looking like, I sent you a slide, you probably didn't get it, but it was a slide showing how much food we export versus how much we import, and it ain't looking good. We don't export a lot because we're not making a lot. So we need food from other nations more than we're making ourselves. And I kind of wanted to get into this tonight, that people need to take it serious this time and make sure you're producing food this year. If not producing food, make sure you have an edge on stored food. And I don't mean like, the Mylar stuff or nothing. I straight up mean like bags of rice, beans, seeds of different kinds, throwing back canned goods that'll last forever. We know that. All of that stuff, you might just want to, grab a little extra things at the supermarket that other people don't normally buy, but are good and they're edible, and you can just shove them in the shelf and don't worry about it. You could just do that. And not only that, just get started on growing this year for sure. If you've taken a break or, you wanted to get started, now's the time, I think. And it's not that I'm saying that there's going to be some famine to kill, millions of people, even though that is possible. What I'm talking about is a wave of financial hardships that brings us into the reset, not only of what the United States is resetting the way we're doing business, the tariffs, the whole thing. Everything's transitioning new. So it would be smart for anybody and everybody to at least get the staples of life taken care of, so that maybe if you get hit with some financial hardship, it won't hurt so bad because your belly will be full, your family's belly will be full. And when it comes down to it, that's one of the most important parts of planning for the future, is making sure that you and your people are healthy and not malnourished because, you didn't want to pay for the excess in the food prices, or maybe you're working too much and you don't eat enough, whatever the case. We don't want to be put in the position, say, Iraqis were in 1999 after a year, after years of being bombed and their food stockpiles being reduced to almost nothing, while the financial elite of that country did fine and they made it through the wave, and they're still sitting over there in Iraq right now, probably with some amount of wealth and comfort to this day, and it never hit them hard, despite 2 wars with the West and hard times while they were getting bombed. Now, that's kind of to the extreme using Iraq, but just say the prices go up to kind of what we think of unimaginable levels now, or just the straight up shortage of goods and availability at cheap prices, enough for people on the lower end of income ladder to make it through without suffering.
Yeah, I found some, my parents brought some old canned tomatoes from 2021 expiry that I had left at the house. And they're like, I don't know if these are still good, but here you go. So they gave me a case of canned tomatoes and paste, tomato paste, and, you know, skinless tomatoes from Italy. I don't know if it's still good. That's 4 years past to date. So I'm not sure if the canned tomatoes are good. You'd have to tell me, what you think on that. But
I think if it's not swollen, you could probably eat it.
yeah, probably, huh? Because we're looking at this hidden transformation that's happening right now. Is you have to keep asking yourself, why is all this transitioning occurring at this time, but it's being masked by all of these other events that are occurring in such rapid succession? It's like it's a wave of overwhelm, to the point where it's so overwhelming that you don't see the change that's occurring within it, because you're trying to process and deal with the daily overwhelming news stories versus the larger change pattern. They're hitting you with, like, let's say, individual balls of ice in a hailstorm, and you're noticing, ow, 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 versus the entire sky filled with hail coming down at the same time, and looking at the edge of the hailstorm, or maybe a rainbow or something else, because you're being hit by individual pieces of ices so intensely and continuously that you're like, ow, 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 versus seeing the entire, like, you're missing the forest through the trees basically by each individual event. Why is that happening right now? That's more the question. I mean, we're stepping off a solar maximum. All the verifications in here, we're on the downtrend now. So as we step off of this solar maximum and we transition into solar minimum on the 11-year cycle, or 11.8-year cycle every year. Every cycle is about the same, give or take a couple months. The magnetic field of the sun is stepping down and changing. So is the magnetic field of our planet. So what I would notice off of this, if we're coming from the high peak of our regular solar activity, and we saw the vast amount of change that occurred in 2020, that was 2 years before we reached the peak, or 2.5, let's say. But knowing that, we would come into a different magnetic state right at the peak of solar maximum, and we were in the middle of COVID. I am wondering, that was a scatter pattern there too, the way you're perceiving reality and humanity's perceiving and interacting with reality is to the point of almost everybody's noticing something's different, right? They can't put their finger on it. Everybody notices something different, but in unison, the world has woken up that something is different in the functioning of our world. It doesn't matter if it's pricing, or if it's weather, or if it's government, or if it's immigration, or whatever it is. Everything is just completely different for shipping and logistics and geopolitics and treaties and tariffs and money value. What's considered value? What's considered, like, how do you even measure value anymore has changed. Like, everybody understands whatever was back then, even 5 years ago, is completely different. This is not even remotely the same world. Now, is that because it just randomly is this set of circumstance of events happening on the planet, or is it the magnetic field of the sun has changed greatly enough now it's affecting our planet to the point that the way your mind and those two lobes of your brain electrically are, well, they're interpreting the stimuli differently. Now, my whole conjecture was, once we were stepping up into the maximum phase of this solar cycle that we're in, the scatter wave was there because the magnetic field changes were there also at the same time. And when we reached this plateau for a couple of years, and you notice COVID, poof, gone. Because that distraction pattern no longer was needed. Something ramping up into this solar maximum was needed to mask that. Awareness of whatever it would have been had there not been COVID, everybody would have noticed there was something strange, unusual going on. But to put all that extra stress and everything on top of it, you wouldn't even notice it. You were still worried about the daily events of the loss of jobs, the economy, the lockdowns, this and that, the police coming to your house because you didn't wear a mask, all these garbage. And now we're coming to solar maximum. We are stepping off of it. So my whole thing is, okay, we're coming back into a juncture point of electromagnetic disturbance and change once again. So what is going to be thrown at us at this time right now to get you to not notice the electromagnetic changes where you're seeing and you're understanding things differently? You know, there needs to be another whole bombardment of scatter patterns so you don't understand as we step off into a different magnetic field. And we're here again right now. So my question out there to everybody is, this is going to be a hidden transformation once more. We're coming back off of this, but the intensity of this step down is going to be, I mean, ferociously intense. And as we get down through the next 4 years and ultimately into solar minimum, this is when it really is going to rock the planet, because we're coming into something we haven't seen at least in 400 years to 2,000 year period. And this is going to be the onset of this low solar activity is absolutely disrupting food production. But at the same time, the human resonance field is being disrupted as greatly. Is it a time of enlightenment? I'm just not sure, but I know it's a time of people understanding something's different. And I'm just going to leave it there, because I could go on for an hour about this same subject here of these energies being used against us versus harmonizing with it for potentiality of growth of us. And that's where we sit today, I do believe. So please, everybody, prepare. It would be food, it would be water, but it would also be your consciousness. And understand these news stories that are out there made for you by AI to get you to think of and feel certain emotions are going to be ridden on top of, and they're going to nail you and hammer you with a jackhammer with story after story after story. And all the changing events around the planet when we move to stablecoin issuance and gold back this and a real world asset that, and everything you ever knew from value is going to be stripped away and then reassessed to different value and given back to you in a different form. That's all going to occur in the next 2 years. Unbelievably, at the exact same time we're coming off a solar maximum down into the solar minimum period, when there'll be the most disruption electromagnetically, and you're noticing it the most as well. And this is the world we get to enjoy for the next 24 months, man. Spring cometh.
Yeah. The reason that I kind of agree about the food thing is, let's see here. I want to make sure I got the right article for people to read. This one's called America Using Domestic Food Supplies as a Statecraft Tool Faces Pressures. And it faces pressures because we do not export near the amount of stuff that we import, because we don't have it. We're not making it anymore. It's not like in the past when the United States used to use what they're calling a statecraft, basically as food as a weapon, as Henry Kissinger used to say. We'll use food as a weapon, right? We were actually doing that around the world. Now that we don't have the food to use as a statecraft or as a weapon, you see stuff like, you know, us taking back the Panama Canal, which we would have to have in order to assure the United States imports and exports the right amount of things to stay afloat, instead of letting other countries like China basically control those port of entries where people get to move goods from the Atlantic to the Pacific. Now, if we end up going into some kind of world war, it will be essential that we control the Panama Canal. That's just, you know, common sense. Not only because of limiting what craft move from which ocean to which, but the goods that are being shipped around. Now, we're about to see stuff like, I saw one where Iran was basically trying to hijack an oil tanker. I think that's what it was. But you're about to see an increased amount of combat type business. In other words, incidents on the sea that may turn violent or, you know, change the whole arrangement of things. And one of those would be a buildup of naval forces around the Panama Canal. Now, I'm sure you have been keeping track of what's going on in the Middle East. So there's areas around the Black Sea that are contested, basically, between the East and the West. And the Middle East powers are contesting basically the canals and ports of entry there on the eastern side of the Mediterranean. And the EU really needs to control the Strait of Gibraltar there in order for them to survive. If they do not, then they are dependent on the United States, Africa, and Russia and China for all of their imports. And if the waterways are now being contested, if we change the map a little bit, say we annex Greenland, we take back the Panama Canal, then China would inevitably, in response, go ahead and try to maybe not invade Taiwan, but completely control the waters around Japan and Taiwan, assuring that they control the trade in the Pacific and the South Pacific, which puts Australia and those countries down there in a predicament because all of the waterways that lead to them come out of the Middle East or from the South Pacific and the North Pacific, meaning China, Japan, Korea. They have a lot of deals with those countries for their food because they don't produce enough food for themselves, almost just like it was a plan that all of a sudden we stopped. But I don't think we stopped it. It's just slowed down. It's slowed down. And that's all that's really happening. And you sent me this article with this AI bot basically mowing the fields, if I can find that again. This is the next era of transhumanism that we're about to go in. But in order for us to get there, the number of mouths to feed necessarily has to go down. Just like Bill Gates had this formula up on the screen behind him at his talk, there was a P that was in that formula that was populous. And that's the one that he wanted to reduce to almost a net zero, I think was the term that they were using. Reduce carbon means reduce people, or vice versa. Reduce people, they're trying to sell it that if we get rid of people, then there'll be less carbon. But considering that carbon is just a red herring and doesn't really factually fit into anything that's going on to the world, it's not about that. So what it's really about is reducing the population. Now, some bright minds out there have realized that by 2050, the world's population will be at its plateau. And when we go through the years up to there, there's other ways to aid in assuring that this plateau will happen and then the inevitable fall of the populace from that point. After that, they have a new formula, and that formula is how many robotic products, war weapons, and populace does the world need. There's a formula. Now, I don't know if it's the same formula that was on those stones that they just recently blew up, but I would imagine that those numbers are close to that. And that would be about 500 million people worldwide. Now, if we have 8+ billion at the current moment, that tells you that lots of populations are going to have to disappear. Somebody has to go. And we already know that the Western world is already facing enormous problems with infertility and people that are sterile. And then you add on these other components. There's other populations around the world in the breakaways of the old Soviet Union, others in the Middle East that have genetic problems due to societal norms. And, all of these things contribute to a date where the population goes down. And in order for them to have this new world where it's a feudalist system that robots are actually in charge of, picking the grain, so to speak, they don't need the peasants so much. So that's where we're going. But we have to travel a lot of road to get there. And despite who's in office here or there or anywhere, the agenda of transhumanism is still moving forward, from them designing new animals to designing new foods. But inevitably, to get this really going, we have to have some kind of conflict. We have to redraw the map. The powers that be need to rebrand and, change their flag in order for them to push this new sales pitch, the answer to all the ailments of society. They have to first have their emergency, their dwindling population, all of these emergencies. They have to have those in order to offer you the fake solutions instead of just the obvious solutions, in where Americans, at least for an example, grow their own food enough where they don't rely on the local grocery store to feed their home. And if we're in that kind of position, then it would be obvious that the export of food of excess will be also in great numbers, which will put us back in the position to use food supplies as a statecraft or a weapon against other countries to bring them in line. Now, the question is this a world plan? And what you're seeing on TV is just the latest chapter in the canon events? Or is there some real pushback? And if so, will that create some of those problems anyway? If you've been paying attention, there's a lot of political violence going on around the world. There's hit teams here and there. There's elections they're not recognizing. We're in some real saucy territory that could turn nasty real fast. So what you think is a win, I know a lot of people out there are tired of winning. Not really. But things that maybe seem to be a good thing and necessary, and even I myself would agree with, in the changes of government here, may have repercussions that we cannot avoid, which involves global conflict. And I seen an article last week where Poland basically reinstituted their draft and is making all their young military age men do military training. And I seen the articles wording it in a way where it doesn't sound bad, but then there's another article where the Polish prime minister or president or whatever is asking us to put nukes on their doorstep. Now, I don't see why they really feel threatened by Russia unless all of these people know something that we don't. Well, maybe not this audience, but people in general, and that is hard times are coming. And just like in the last bout of hard times, the best example that they actually won't let us forget is World War II. And in that time, more people starved to death or were displaced and died because of malnutrition than the people that were killed, which is an unimaginable number. Now, when you go over to some of these changes in government, like in China and Russia, you could see that the number of people that starved to death far outnumbers the people that were actually, straight legitly murdered. But the numbers are just crazy. We're talking hundreds of millions of people that were totally disappeared off the planet at that time. And if you think it can't or it won't happen again, I think people are very naive. Now, it might not happen so bad for us over here in the United States being in a bubble, but if events progress the way they have, the situation at our southern border, the situation in the Panama Canal, our relations with China, any of these could trigger where hundreds of millions of people worldwide die again. And that's not counting any natural, intersection of events, which I might put to you, they may know is going to increase in number in this same time period in the cycle. I don't doubt for 1 second that there are not think tanks out there that, take in every idea, volcanism, the sun's activity, classical cycles and politics and the way people behave, and that they don't have some kind of formula that takes in account the transhuman movement, the basically, I don't know how fast our technology is duplicating today, but it seems like it's almost to that exponential point, which would make the people that own and know about the technology slow their roll, so they can remap the world in the proper business situation to be in control. And this is going to be a top down technocratic civilization. Whether you want to participate in it or not, you're going to have to deal with it in some way or another. The question is will we be able to balance that with classic forms of civilization and human behavior like farming, ranching, and some type of private property?
Oh, that's a good, I don't know. I really don't have the answer for you, because the only thing we're farming right now in America at great tonnage would be the grains. That's it. You know, we've gone away from any kind of veg and fruit production. I mean, within reason, and so many things have been wiped out from these extremes in our climate here the last year or two. Grapefruit and orange production's down to some 1920s levels. So if we look around the United States, what do we really farm here? Well, California, you got some veg. It provides 30% of the green produce for America. So where's the other 70% come from? Have they taught us to use the backyard gardens? Have they given us plans from the Victory Gardens to grow the most food in the smallest amount of space on a proven plant track inside a certain amount of garden, 45 feet by 15 feet? That's what every single family had to do in the World War, the Second War. That information was stripped away from us afterward. So what are we left with growing for the world now? The GMO grains. And that's one thing Mexico was all hot and bothered about, was they didn't want to take our GMO produced foods. So they did. It's not that they didn't want the corn. They didn't want GMO corn. See, they don't tell you that in the news. The whole thing, oh, well, they said they didn't want the ag produce coming in. They didn't want the GMO ag produce coming in. And that's all we offer to the world. GMO sorghum, GMO wheat, GMO corn. It's great if you're making ethanol. It doesn't really matter. You're not going to consume it as a human. You're just going in through a process and you're extracting the alcohol. Cool. Higher sugar content. But aside from that, what are you doing? Just giving tumors to animals that eat that in feedlots? Great. So take a look at our production in America. We really don't have anything to offer to the world because the world is turning against GM foods. And if they do have a second choice, they're not going to choose anything GM. And I did not know this. I just was given a fun fact for anybody out there, and I wish anybody could double check it here. Fact checkers out there. Russia, of all places, and you think, you know, the demonization of Russia, they consider you a terrorist if you produce GM crops and try to sell it at the commercial level. Like, you were actually given a special file by their security forces to trace down everybody you've given that GM food to, and how your exporters got the seeds in, and how you became a blight on the country for the negative effects of having genetically modified, contaminating the heirloom seed supply there. As hard as that is to believe, you're actually considered an enemy of the state by bringing genetically modified seed crop in the country. So wind it back to here, that's all we produce. So if me as another government, if I could buy something that's not GM, I would absolutely be out on the open market looking for clean seed. Like me, I don't generally buy supermarket meat. I go to the Amish and I have them. You have to see, here's the thing about it. I need to pre-order my animals like a year in advance, though. But since I've been here in the loop for a few years, now we're on the treadmill finally. We got the slots, we got the trustability, we always have the money. And then we always order our animals out. So the Amish, they only grow heirloom varieties of their feed that they feed their animals in their own fields. And then they finish them on grass. That there's no chemical spray. And it's just wild field grass. So I know those animals are well taken care of. They love their animals. And they're given clean food. So that in turn becomes clean meat for me because they don't vaccinate the animals either. So I know where it came from. I know there's no GM in it. I know there's no vax in the animals, and I want to eat that meat. That's the meat I go for. I choose to spend the time to go and order it and find it and seek it out. Because I don't want to get the GM garbage and the whole vax meat, GM fed nightmare chain of food that is our traditional food system in America and Europe as well. Although they cut back way on the GM several years ago. You even need to label it now there. So heaven forbid you need to put a GM label on it. I mean, they went kicking, screaming into the night just because California had to label it. Like that, the GMO grain lobby is heavy and powerful. They do not want you to know you're eating genetically modified organisms. And everybody knew GM was the big word, genetically modified crops. So they changed it to bioengineered. So BE crops now. You got to look for bioengineered or BE. They'll call it modified by biogenic modification, or there's all these kind of different names for it now. They will go out of their way a million miles not to call it genetically modified anymore because everybody's on that. But bioengineered, people still aren't onto that big word yet. So where does that take us? Because as we move into this new world here in the next couple months, we're going to have to revalue everything. The revaluation of what is considered valuable that you can price something off of is about to change. And Ransom, I'll leave you with one last thought here. Everybody knows this fiat paper money system is no longer functional. The only way to bring back confidence in a money system is to back it with some sort of like physical asset. Gold, silver, land, titles to some things, cars, what might they be. So this real world asset base of a new currency. And when you reset that currency again, and you could look at it in the way of us chopping 2 zeros off of our money, or you could look at it as it returned us back to 100% purchase power of our money, the dollar. Right now, our dollar buys us 4 cents of what the same dollar would buy you in 1913, 1914, 1915. If they revalue everything and take us to a gold-backed system, there's going to be nobody making $50,000 a year. Hell, my parents, when they bought their first house, it was only like $13,000 back in the 60s. But my grandparents were telling me when they bought their big 5-bedroom house, that thing cost $10,000. And to hear them throw those numbers around today, it's nigh impossible to believe that you could buy a house for $10,000. And not a small little like 1-room house. We're talking a family house. But if the money was revalued back to 1913, value where a $1 would get you 10 cans of soup. And people's average wage was like $1,000 a month or under $800 a month. You're going to have to revalue. Your whole mind is going to have to shift on the value of everything. And it's going to have to squeak itself down into people are going to make 10 grand a year. That's unthinkable now. That's below poverty levels. But in a revamped and revalued currency where the currency is 100% purchase power again, that makes every single dollar, 96% more valuable than it is right now. So like as we move into this new system and stable coins come and, corporate issuance of stable coins to take over the treasury's position right now, this is happening in real time. This is happening so blindingly fast. Even me, I'm pretty much into that ecosystem and world, I am being left behind by the amount of news that is coming out every day, how fast it's coming out, the giant swaths of payment systems that are being, first it was 2 banks, and then it was like 9 banks, then it was 16, and now it's 370 like a week later. Now it's going to be 500 and something banks next week that's going to be on the XRP protocols to come in for their distributed ledger settlement. It literally went from 9 banks that were on the protocol a year ago to like more than almost 600 this year. Like within a year, it went from 9 to 600. Like these are the kind of gargantuan changes that are here. Like the entire monetary system is about to shift, and it is going to be blindingly fast and catch everybody off guard. You're not even going to know what it means. All you're going to know is your money's going to get cut left, right, and center. But the whole thing is they're going to try to reissue you money that has actual 100% value, but people are just going to lose their minds when they either get their bank account swooped, or when they're going to say, yeah, your new salary is $9,000 a year. And you'll be like, what, $9,000 a year? What the hell? But they're not going to get it until they start going out into the store and trying to buy stuff again. Like the retailers are going to have to reel back their prices too, back to what we consider like early 1900s, like 1910, 1915 prices. Everything's going to revert. We're going to drop back 100 years. So even that alone, to like try to reprogram the consciousness of not only Americans, but everywhere around the planet. Like the ECB, the European Bank, they are just totally bankrupt. And I mean, sheesh, their bonds just absolutely wrecked. They had everything collapsed so much in Europe these last couple of days that you have to go back to the fall of the Berlin Wall. That's how much change occurred in a matter of 2 days in Europe, and it didn't even barely make our news. Like just a vast, mind-bending things with the economies around the world are happening in real time, and it's all pointing to the reset. But again, I'll wind you back to about a half hour ago. Ask the same question. Why now, Ransom? Why now? It could have been a decade ago. Why is all this happening right now with the electromagnetic field changes? Why now? So you can start to see the food's in peril, the economy is going to shift and just like shatter everybody. Yeah, you're not going to be able to think straight when the economy gets shifted and we revert back again, and just these giant numbers we're used to now for hyperinflation go back to mere pennies again. It is going to blow people away. I don't even know how they're going to revalue the mortgages too, because the mortgage values from today, if you're spending, $1,500. I mean, I was lucky. I just had a lot of things just happen, and my house payment's not that big in comparison to a lot of people, because I only have a little tiny log cabin out in the forest. But even that to be revalued, like people that are paying $4, $5, $6 grand a month on their house payment, to have that reverted back and they're paying something like $400 or $500 a month, or even less, $200 on the revalued new money, but then their salaries are going to get cut at the same time back to that same equivalent, let's say, percentage. I mean, people are going to lose their minds when they see the reduction in everything, until they can understand the value got replaced by the reduction of the number. And I don't know, man. Our world's about to just get radically shifted here. Maybe I rambled too much. I hope everybody stayed with me on that tangent there. I got a lot on my mind these days.
Actually, I have one point to when you were talking about the house for $10,000. I do not live in a very nice area. I'll just put it that way. It's low poverty. However, where I'm at, the people own their properties. So in this little section, they actually own it. They don't rent it. Those people are slowly dying, and real estate companies are taking control of those properties, and they do not rent them out. What they do is they put them up for sale. So just imagine a 1960s, I don't know if you know what a Miami style mobile home is. So it's like got a specific look to it. But anyway, a 60s style home that's a mobile home, a trailer house, some people call them, and maybe less than a quarter of a lot, around a quarter of an acre of a lot around it, squeezed in between other people with similar homes. And they want from $185K to $200K for one of those properties, knowing full well no one in this area that would, want to buy that home and live here is going to purchase it. They just don't have the money. Most of the people in that income bracket that would be looking for that property cannot pay almost $200,000 for, a 1960s trailer that's going to need a lot of upkeep, excuse me, if I could talk right. So they're not going to buy it. So that property's just going to sit there until they level it and put something else there.
And ransom. Let me say also, you'd have to pay 40,000 down, so 20% of the house price. So if it was 200, you have to put $40,000 down cash to be able to get the remainder of the loan for that property.
Right. So, and who's going to do that? Most of the people that are wanting to live here or able to live there, they could not get a loan from the bank in the first place because of their income levels. However, in other areas, I've been keeping track, and they also have older style Adobe homes and stuff. And what's been happening is slowly those people also die or move or whatever. And you never really see another individual buy that property. It's always a real estate, group that buys it, and then they put it up for sale. And when no one buys it because no one wants to live there, they get 5 or 6 or 7 of the same properties near it, and they just flatten it and they build something on it that rents, like an apartment complex or a commercial building or whatever. And I wanted to show you guys this article because I think this one really explains the future of what's about to happen. You're kind of asking that question. The world's worst financial catastrophe could happen soon. And what it gets into down here is that they are creating AIs that are out there in all of the different markets competing with humans. So obviously the AI may make better decisions than human in real time as far as attributing wealth. So it says today there are developers around the world working on creating artificial intelligences, agents that can autonomously do millions of useful things like book airline tickets, dispute credit card charges, even trade crypto. Matter of fact, one AI called Truth Terminal has already made itself a millionaire. It's recently made news by becoming the first AI millionaire promoting cryptocurrencies it was gifted. While not fully autonomous yet, it's quite likely by later this year, some AI agents, not dissimilar from viruses, will be able to independently wander the internet, causing significant change in the real world. Now, that's pretty, vague. But if you think about if you put AI on the case to compete against other traders, to compete against other real estate brokers, to compete just dollar for dollar making money electronically, you can see that it won't be long before AI actually owns the money. Now, if AI owns the money, whoever programmed the AI, you would think, would be the owners of that money. But it's very possible that all that money disappears out of the system from bigger, more virus-like AIs that suck the money from those. So like a pyramid scheme of artificial intelligence. Now, somebody's at the top of that, obviously. But this is where we're moving to. And, to point out what you were talking about, the genetic foods, that is the future of government's production. Of governments allowing production. So even in the U.S., you're going to see, despite, people not really wanting to eat GMO stuff, there's those people that will. They'll do it because it's cheaper. And if food prices are expensive to buy real food, here comes those options that I was talking about earlier in the show, where they fix the emergency by offering you, I don't know, like we talked about last week, the Israelis startup company making dairy-infused potatoes, but it's not like, Grandma used to make that put milk and butter and gave you some creamy mashed potatoes or scalloped potatoes. No, we're talking about a genetically modified, engineered food that advertises the ability to keep you healthy, even though maybe you don't eat that much. And that's the future of the food production around the world. And like I said, some changes have to happen before we get to that point. Some pretty dark times. We have to have emergencies in order to deploy the answers to those emergencies. And I think they're doing it now because AI now is at a point that they can use it as one of the world's, I'm going to say, weapons of mass destruction when it comes to the human civilization. It will be controlling the designing of the food, where the food is shipped, when it's farmed. And you showed me that big robot. People forget that little robots can be upscaled to be big robots. And it's not really hard now in our time to build a machine that adequately farms, basically. It gets the apples off the trees, it gets the grain out of the fields. All of those are possible. And not only that, the companies that are creating them and the ones that they're doing business with, they can afford to make fleets of these things that will be in charge of doing it, which means you do no longer need immigrant labor or even labor from low-skilled workers from the country that you're in that's not immigrants. You no longer need those. So in order to keep those people placated and happy, you would have to come up with some kind of universal basic income to keep them happy, to keep them entertained, pizza and balloons, until their generation no longer is alive on the planet. And then you have a whole world of new young people that were bought into the system from birth, in medicine and government and sciences. And I say that with a chuckle, but you know, the mainstream of science has been running the ideas in institutions of learning and even government policies for some time. Now, despite educated people now seeing through the hoax, there's billions, literally, of people that have a different opinion. And we all know what happens whenever people get hungry and someone points the finger and says, look, it's those people, it's their fault. And those would be the people that would be saying maybe there is no climate change caused by man. Maybe those people that say, hey, we're just going through a cycle. This was going to happen. Stop freaking out. They made this movie recently. I forgot the name of it. But I think it's on Netflix. But basically, this asteroid is headed to Earth, and a couple of scientists discover the asteroid, and they tell the appropriate authorities, and those authorities contact the government, and the government has them come visit and ask them, how sure are you that it's going to hit? And they're like, well, with the math and the data, it's 100% it's going to hit us. And then they go on talk shows and they do all of the rounds, and no one cares. No one believes them because the authorities are saying, it's probably not going to hit us. It's not going to hit us. And despite going outside and people seeing it in the night sky becoming larger and larger and larger, the general public just refused to believe it. It's kind of like 9/11. When you talk to people about that subject, they'll tell you things like, well, I choose not to believe. And that's the problem, is millions of people will choose not to believe real information despite it being in their benefit, because we live in a controlled, closed circuit system. And now all the education, history, and even basic sciences are going to be above the normal citizens' intellect, because the internet is where they get their information on everything. And if the mainstream says this, that's what they're going to follow.
Yeah, speaking of different opinions, the Knights Templar. I feel like we're just in a doom loop here, because if you go back to Knights Templar, not allowed to have a different opinion, not allowed to have a different opinion of the workings of the cosmos, not allowed to talk about the Atlantean technologies or possibly pre-Younger Dryas, which was the center covenant of the belief system. You're not allowed to deviate from the narrative. If you were burned at the stake in Friday the 13th based on this complete wipeout of the Templars. And then we come to this same modern era where instead of using the swords in the day of the Templars, we're using technology to silence people here in our modern era, because you might deviate from a narrative or deviate and understand there's workings of our universe, there's cycles within cycles. These changes of electromagnetism off of our star onto our planet. And this same hidden knowledge that's now available for anybody that has fingertips on a keyboard can do their own research. By pointing some of these very simple things out that have been tenets of beliefs and religious systems of old, it is no different. Are we the Knights Templar of today, present day? We've changed swords for keyboards. We've changed swords for social media and algorithms. But the one thing that remains exactly the same is the suppression of thought and idea, and the wanting to eliminate you for having the wrong think. And that has been going on for millennia, not centuries, millennia. And it just continues to, spin in this cesspool. And we find ourselves now at an integral portion of, human history where we need to talk about these issues. We need to talk about it. We really do. We're at this point now where the food's going to be less and less available. And, I was going into it, and, I got some of my research on the computer that crashed, and I'm trying to get back up live again. But I had used Grok to one of my great advantages to do crop forecasting. I was asking Grok, hey, tell me the nations that have experienced 20% crop losses or greater. And I started with wheat, and it gave me a list of 20 plus countries that have lost at least 20% of the wheat this year. The planting's off, the floods are there, the winter wheat wasn't planted last year. I mean, just all these things that it went through. So then I ask it, all right, so this region in this country that you're showing me the losses, and show me, which news agency is putting out the news about the crop losses in this country. And then I was asking, all right, so the total of this province up there, what's that the total of the country total? I was able to front run out 3 months in advance of what the USDA is doing. And we are in for some massive crop losses. Oats would be down 7% this year, globally. Wheat, 4%. And then you go back in these last 3 chapters of history, also since the 1970s, and you'll find there's been 3 other instances where they've had 3 to 4% losses in wheat, and it drives the price up 30 to 40%. And this is what we're looking at for the rest of the year. All grain crops on the planet are down 4% at the minimum, meaning prices up. So anyway, share with your friends and family. Thank you for joining us tonight. Civilization Cycle. Check out our website, civilizationcycle.com, and also buy me a coffee /Civilization Cycle if you like this content. Support our program. We'll see you next week.
And that's all for this evening. Thanks for joining us. And see you again next Thursday. Maybe we'll figure out our technological problems and we'll be sweet right then. Peace out.
There are few things you can count on in a major disaster. Having your water supply cut off is one of them. With the Alexa Pure Emergency Water Bank, you'll have months of drinking water in your home. Everyone else will stand in line waiting to get just a few bottles. It's one of the easiest, most affordable ways to store emergency water, and it takes up hardly any space. The Alexa Pure Emergency Water Bank includes 1 BPA-free liner, comes with a siphon pump for extracting water, provides easy-to-follow instructions, fits just about any bathtub, large or small, fills quickly in 30 minutes or less, holds up to 65 gallons of water, and keeps water fresh for up to 16 weeks, holds about 2 months of water for one person. A person can generally survive without water for about 3 days. However, the exact amount of time depends on many factors, including age, activity level, and overall health. Don't gamble with your life and well-being. Being prepared is easier than ever with Civilization Cycle and Alexa Pure.
Our Grid Doctor 3300 has been upgraded to include EMP Intercept technology. Our built-in Grid Doctor technology incorporates industrial-grade components to safely protect the Grid Doctor 3300 and keep it operating in those dangerous times. EMP Intercept technology has been designed to exceed U.S. military requirements for a high-altitude nuclear detonation that results in an electrical magnetic pulse. This protection also covers lightning strikes, grid surges, coronal mass ejections, solar flares, and phases E1, E2, and E3 of an electromagnetic pulse.
New York City in the early morning, after a night of no electric power, and so no lights, elevators, subway trains, or any trains, airports, air conditioning, traffic signals, television. What it did have in the dark streets was a wild outburst of crime. Arson, looting, mugging, and 1,000 false fire alarms.
Never get left out in the cold. There is never a reason to ever let you or your family suffer. Instafire and Civilization Cycle are on a mission to make fire starting and off-grid living easy for everyone. You shouldn't have to be a mountain man to strike a flame and make a fire anytime, anywhere.